Here we go. AC2 correction. So Ruth is a roofer in Fort McMurray, Alberta. She's reshingling a roof. She needs to know the angle of elevation of the roof in order to choose the appropriate type of shingles. Okay, so the steeper your roof, or like the steeper your roof, sometimes that affects the types of shingles that are used. If your roof is shallower like this, then the water isn't going to run off as much. So that's the idea behind it. But even if you had no idea what they were talking about, you should still be able to use cosine law to answer the question. So the first is calculate the measure of angle C, this one right here, okay? And we notice that this is a side scenario, right? So you can say side, I have to use cosine law. You indicate the law that you have to use. So using your formula, the pattern is as follows. I know that some of you, right, on your study sheet, you may have cosine of A. So everything is A for you, right? Like it's based on A, but it doesn't matter. Morning. Cosine of C is here. You go like that. And I'll speed up a little bit. There you go, so you can follow. So the most important one is this last one here, which is across the angle you're trying to find. Okay? And then the other two fill up the rest. And you've heard me say this a lot, right? So this is how that goes. Oh, it says right. No, cannot be. This number should not show up anymore. So my bad. I'm kind of daydreaming here. Yes, thank you. So then I do the top separately. Let me look at my key here real quick. That's 114. Exactly, that is interesting. Don't let that surprise you though. Sometimes that just happens. Okay, so if you have this, you already get a mark in my book. And the province. They give you a mark, it's like, okay, you're using cosine law, that's the right one. Even if you try to solve for B, let's say, like you fill in the numbers so that you're technically solving for B, you would still get a mark for using cosine law. So 1 mark there. And then 1 mark for the work. So to figure out C, angle C, I take cosine inverse of whatever I get here. So I will go 114 divided by 156. What do you need to remember here? What could happen with the top number here? It could be a negative, correct? That just tells us that it's obtuse. That's all, right? If it's positive, it's going to be acute. It hasn't happened yet, but did you know that this could be 0? We're not going to talk about it in this unit. We talk about it in a different unit, but this could actually be 0. That means that you have a 90-degree angle, if that ever happens. That's all. So we turn that into a decimal. So angle C, I go shift cosine equals, is 43.05, right? So you get another mark for the correct final answer. You get a mark for the correct setup, okay? We're going to close that off there. It says calculate the measure of angle B. So that's this one here. You have a choice now. You have a pair. You technically just figured out a pair. So you could use sine law if you wanted to. But some of you are just going to reuse cosine law. That's fine. I'm going to use sine law. I hope you're okay with that. I'm just going to say sine of 43.05. Okay. This angle over 8.5. You're going to get the same answer, so don't worry about it. Sine of B, right, over 6.5. They always go, sine law goes in pairs. So sine of B is going to be found by going cross multiply and divide. Divided by 8.5, you get 0. It better start with a 0 when you're trying to find an angle. 0.522, and that keeps going. Okay, so if I want to find angle B, I just have to go sine inverse of this, and you get you're going to get the same answer because I have both here, 31.47 degrees. So if you have that, you get we'll give you another 2 marks for that. Okay, because you need 1 for setup, 1 for work. So this is going to change and be out of 4. So change this question out of 4. And obviously if you made a mistake in part A, then that's going to translate to B. So you're going to have to just do some investigative work to see if your mistake, you lose here, but then you would still get 2 marks for that second part. So this is technically part B. This is part A for me. If you use cosine law again, you should get the same answer. So which one is the largest angle here? It's 12, Mr. Dirksen. Close. It's the one across from 12. Right? 12 is the longest side, so this one is it. Think about it. If I'm the angle across the longest side, the longer that side gets, the more I'm going to have to open my angle, right, to make sure I meet that side. So there you go. Next, calculate the length of side A. You're trying to find a pair. You cannot find a pair, but you should also realize that this is side, angle, side. The 2 sides are surrounding the only angle you know. So to figure out A, you go A squared is equal to 5.2 squared. Does this one look familiar to you? Straight from your booklet, guys. Cosine of 43. Yeah, so 1 mark there. If you have that, you get a mark. The next line for me is usually just take the root of whatever this gives you. This is where having a good calculator is going to pay off big time. Because you can, if you're just careful, you can ace these questions and get 3 to 4 marks per question for a trig. Okay, vehicle finance doesn't even get there. Like a question is usually worth 1 or 2 marks for vehicle finance, whereas trig is usually 3 or 4. So make sure you take the root. And this is in centimeters. Okay? You shouldn't be losing marks for units on tests, exams, quizzes anymore. Like that should be a rounding. I'm kind of okay. I got like maybe. But so 1 mark for setup, 1 mark for correct final answer. So this page is worth 6. All right, backside. This one is gonna be worth 4. Okay, so I tell you that already. I changed the way. I actually went back to my original and I changed this to 4 as well. So next, if you want to take this course again next semester, it'll be 4. I highly recommend it. Anyways, calculate the measure of the indicated side. So we want this ultimately. So let's see what we can start with. Only 1 law works. Remember. We're going to use this, right? This angle is across the side here. So that's what we call a pair. So definitely sine law. So I'm going to start with that. Sine of 112 over 7.9 meters. And then you have to kind of, I think you need to start asking, what can I solve for? So you look, what else do I have? I have this side, correct? This one. That one is across this angle here, Z. Technically, that's all you can do at the moment. You cannot solve for x just yet. So we're going to put 6.4 meters here, and then go sine of z or z, whatever you want to call it, there. So you're going to mark for that. Just for the setup there, you're going to mark. Then we solve. So remember, don't just put z here. Sine, right? Like an angle is always glued to either sine or cosine here when we start. So you cross multiply and divide. 6.4 times sine of 112 divided by 7.9. I'm going to go angle Z is equal to sine inverse. I know I'm going to have to use the inverse. I'm going to type that into my calculator. Hold on. 6.4 times sine of 112 divided by 7.9. And it starts with a 0. So then you're definitely getting there. If this starts with a 1, 2, 3, 4, anything that isn't a 0, you are in trouble. You need to go back and check. Something didn't go right. So this is 7,511, and it keeps going. Use all decimals. So shift sine for inverse sine there it is, angle Z is 48.69, because this 8 bumps that to a 9 degrees. Another mark for that, so 1 and 1, right? 1 for setup, 1 for work, and final answer. Yes. Okay, so now we're going to inch our way into figuring out this. We can now find angle X, so we go angle X is going to be 180 minus the 112 minus the one I just found. And so angle X is going to be 19.31. And I'll give you a mark for that. The province actually, every time you have to figure out that third angle, usually there's a mark associated with that. Okay? And so now we can start. You can use cosine law if you like, because technically you have side, angle, side up here, which allows you to solve for that. I'm going to stick to sine law here. So I'm going to stick with the same pair that I was given at the beginning, and now I'm going to go sine of 19.31 over x. Okay? So then you just cross multiply and divide. While you were doing this AC, I made up, I don't know, I'm going to say like a study sheet way of entering both formulas. If that's going to help you, I'm going to give you that opportunity to copy it if you want. So cross multiply and divide, you get 2.82 meters. Because you're using sine law again, or like I'm not going to give you a mark for setup here, I'm just going to give you a mark for correct final answer. So that's where we get 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 4 marks for this one. So then the thing about sine law, cosine law is once you get it, it's kind of like the same over and over, right? But you need to be able to spend some time and make sure you get it. So if you need to go back to watch sine law, cosine law, go do it. The largest angle is across 19 here, so this is kind of like the angle we're interested in. Give it a letter of your choice. I'm going to go K. I don't know, doesn't matter. So it's right longest side, therefore largest angle. This is the one. So we go cosine, it's side, side, side. So it's cosine of K. And you're going to add 2 sides. So you're going to add 12 squared and 18 squared. This is actually an old exam question, by the way. From, I don't know how long ago. But this is exactly an old exam question. So sometimes I throw them in there. So you do the top. You get 107. And the bottom is 432. Something to make sure you remember and check your formulas. Square everything on the top, but do not square in the denominator. I have sometimes I have students still squaring one of these bottom numbers. Don't do it. Or they forget to square the top. Like they simply do not have these in there. So you got to make sure you get that right. Angle K is cosine inverse of whatever I get when I divide these. And that is 0.2476, and that keeps going. So angle K is 75.66 degrees. So 1 mark for setup, 1 mark for correct final answer. It's a shame that I didn't have a negative in this one, but don't worry about it. You'll still get to see it down the road. No obtuse angles, that's what I'm trying to say here. But that's okay. We're going to get to it. So 2 and 4. So the back side is 6 as well, right? So back side is worth 6. Front is worth 6. So that's a total of 12, correct? So put the 12 on top here. And make sure your name and last name is on there.